Logging into Vantage brings us to the homepage that provides summary information about the discovered assets being monitored and their associated security alerts. A map in the center of the screen, together with a carousel just above this, provides information about the locations being monitored. A status panel in the top left-hand corner provides us with the latest and most important security information. In this case, we can see there's a button saying 2 new alerts in the past 24 hours. Clicking on this button will take us to the alert details pages for these alerts. On the right-hand side, we have the assets monitored status panel, and in this case, we can see we have 186 IT assets, 274 IoT assets, and 804 OT assets being monitored. The map in the center of the screen is also showing a red link showing suspicious activity between 2 locations. Clicking on this link will take us to the asset details. The alert details page shows summary information at the top of the screen, including the type of alert, the what happened, possible cause and suggested solution, and a score. In this case, the alert is associated with malware detection. We have a score of 9 out of 10. The what happened is related to suspicious activity from the Havix remote access Trojan. Possible cause is that someone probably clicked on a link that they shouldn't have done. And a suggested solution is to investigate and probably clean up the associated machine. Below this, we have the actor's details, which tells us about the source and destination of the suspicious activity. And to the right of that, we have a playbook that's been developed for this incident. The playbook provides step-by-step guidance to the user responding to the security incident. This playbook can be updated as the user undertakes each step in the response. Scrolling down, we have additional details about the alert, such as its creation time, whether or not the alert has been acknowledged, and its close time. And below this, we have a mapping between the alert and the MITRE ATT&CK for ICS framework. In this case, the alert is associated with command and control commonly used port. Clicking on the commonly used port will provide some additional context about the technique being used by this type of attack. The navigation bar on the left-hand side of the screen provides the main way of interacting with Vantage. Menu items in this navigation bar provide links to important information about the system being monitored, including sites, sensors, assets, alerts, vulnerabilities, traffic, and reports. Each menu item comprises a tile with one or more circles within it. Clicking outside of the circles within a tile brings up summary information, whereas clicking within the circles brings up detailed information. If I click on the assets tile outside of the circle inserts, I'll get summary information of the assets. Here you can see 407 assets have been active in the last 24 hours. If you look at the map, you can see 202 of these assets are related to a site on the west coast of the US, and 205 assets are related to a site on the east coast. Scrolling down the page, you'll get the top asset types. Here you can see we have 159 OT devices, we have 79 VoIP telephones, we have 14 CCTV cameras, etc. Scrolling down, you can see 2 graphs, one showing the top vendors and the other showing the top operating systems. If we're looking at the top vendors and we click on Rockwell Automation, this will bring up all the assets associated with Rockwell Automation. Here you can see the asset details. From left to right, we've got the last activity time, the name of the asset, the IP, the MAC address, the MAC vendor, the operating system where relevant, the type of asset, the vendor, the product name, the operating system or firmware, the technology category, etc. The columns to be displayed can be selected by clicking on the Choose Columns button and then sliding the column visibility slider to the on position. In this case, I'm going to select the MAC vendor, apply that, and you now see we have the MAC vendor column displayed. Moving back to the navigation bar, you can click the list icon within the asset tile to bring up a list of assets that have been active within the last 24 hours. You can clear the time field or set the time field to show assets that have been active prior to the last 24 hours. Above the list, you'll see the asset filter panel, and here you can select which sites you're particularly interested in, or the types of devices, or particular vendors, or the operating system or firmware versions. In this case, I'm going to select Schneider Electric. The list now shows all those Schneider devices being monitored by the Vantage system. If I click on a particular device, then we move into detailed information about that asset. Here you see an image of the asset. In this case, it's a Modicon M340 module. Below that is summary information regarding the type of device, the vendor, the product name, the operating system or firmware, and then some additional detail about the various nodes that make up this device. Also, you'll see along the top here a number of menu items such as links to show the links associated with this device, current sessions associated with the device, and the vulnerabilities. Clicking on the CVE number brings up details for the associated vulnerability. Here you see the vulnerability overview, which includes the CVE number, the category, the probability, and the CVSS score. In this case, it's 10 out of 10. And below this, we have a summary. And in this case, it tells us that a remote attacker could execute arbitrary code via a long password in HTTP basic authentication data. Below this, we have the details of the affected asset. And below here, we have references to the sources of information that Nozomi used when putting together the vulnerability information. If you want to get a list of all the vulnerabilities rather than just the vulnerabilities associated with a particular asset, you need to click on the list icon within the vulnerabilities tile. This brings up a complete listing of all the vulnerabilities associated with the monitored sites. There's a vulnerabilities filter panel at the top of the page, which allows you to select vulnerabilities by site, by category, by probability, by likelihood, or by the CVE number itself. Moving back to the category filter, we can click on the 20 more to show the complete range of vulnerability categories. Here, I'm going to select cryptographic issues, and this will bring up a list of all those devices that have vulnerabilities associated with cryptographic issues. Clicking on the CVE number will bring up the details for the vulnerability as before. Clicking on the vulnerability tile, but not one of the icons within the vulnerability tile, will bring up summary information on vulnerabilities. Here we can see 49,444 vulnerabilities associated with the sites being monitored by Vantage. There's also a map showing the top vulnerable sites, and below this, the top categories of vulnerabilities. At the top of the page, you'll also see a button called Workbooks. Clicking on this will provide actionable insights as to what can be done to reduce the risk based on vulnerabilities. For example, upgrading control logic firmware to 33.00.02 can reduce risk by 58%. Similarly, upgrading to Windows 10 can lower risk by 48%. Clicking on the recommendation disk or review button will bring up a list of devices associated with the recommendation. Now moving on to alerts. If we click the alerts tile within the navigation bar, but not one of the icons within the alerts tile, we get summary information about alerts. On this page, we can see there have been 22 alerts within the last week and 2 new alerts within the past 24 hours. If I click on the red button, it will take me to those 2 new alerts. The map shows the sites where these alerts have occurred. And moving down, we can see the top alert types. For example, malware detections 14. We've had 2 duplicated IP addresses, and we've had 2 lots of suspicious activity. Scrolling further down the page, we can see a bar graph showing the distribution of alert risk. Clicking on a bar will take us to the alerts with the associated risk score. By clicking on the list icon within the alerts tile, we get a list of the alerts that have occurred over the last few days. Modifying or clearing the time field will allow you to see alerts that occurred before the last few days. The alert information shown on this page currently includes the name, the description, risk, source, destination, and protocol of the alerts. By clicking on the Choose Columns button, we can select additional alert information to show. In this case, I'm going to select the type name. Now we can see the type name column is visible. At the top of the page, there is an alert filter column where you can decide on how to select alerts to view. Included in this is whether or not the alerts are acknowledged, whether or not the status is shown as open or closed, or the name of the alert. If I click on the 3 more, you'll see all the alerts that have occurred over the last few days. There's also the ability to select alerts based on risk or based on protocol. In this case, I'm going to select Threat Dragonfly 2 found, which will show me all the alerts associated with that malware. I click on the name, Threat Dragonfly 2, and this brings up the alert details. As before, we get a score, in this case 9.3 out of 10, And we have the what happened, the possible cause, and a suggested solution. Below this, we have the actor details, again telling us about the source and destination of the suspicious activity, additional details on the suspicious activity, and then a timeline of alerts. This is important because this incident has grouped multiple associated alerts based on Nozomi's machine learning. In this case, there's been a packet rule match based on the Eternal Blue exploit. There's also been malware detected within a file moving across the OT network, the file being called CV control engineering .x. And you can see that, just highlight that there. Clicking on any of these individual alerts brings up the alert details page for that alert, just as per any other alert. Again, clicking on the action buttons allows you to acknowledge the alert, close the alert, create an alert rule from the alert, or request a trace. Clicking on the list icon within the traffic tile brings up a list of links. In this case, I've selected a particular site. The information shown includes the from address, the to address, the protocol, the transport protocol, the first activity time, whether or not the link is associated with a broadcast message, the number of transferred packets, and the TCP retransmission percentage. Again, I can use the choose columns to select exactly what link details I want to show. Within the links filter panel at the top, I can also choose the protocol that I wish to focus in on. If I click Ethernet IP, just shows me those links that are associated with Ethernet IP. Clicking on the sensors tile takes us to a page that shows the sensors currently connected to Vantage. In this case, there are 18 sensors, and the map shows the location of those sensors. Clicking on the graph icon at the top of each page brings up a visualization of the devices being monitored by the Vantage solution. If we scroll in, you'll be able to see the individual assets that have been discovered and are currently being monitored. A drop-down menu provides information as to what these assets are. For example, blue are producers, such as industrial controllers, and red are consumers, such as HMIs or SCADA servers. We also have some historians in grey. We also have some VoIP servers in yellow. There's also a time server in pink. The graph can also be filtered using a number of parameters, such as the IP, the vendor, the VLAN, the zones, or the roles of the various assets. Clicking on an end device on the graph will show information regarding that asset. If you click on the details button, you'll get further information. In fact, this is the detailed asset information for that device, as we've seen before. Next to the graph icon is the query icon. Clicking on this allows you to drill down into the system using queries. In this case, I'm going to select the query that I produced earlier. Here you can see I've actually selected all the alerts grouped by type name and produced a pie chart. Finally, I'm going to take you through the administration menu. Depending on permissions, users will have access to an administration menu as shown here on the left-hand side. At the top, we have the system block. General provides options for controlling access to Vantage from sensors and browsers. Licenses displays which licenses are active, such as base license, smart polling, threat intelligence, and asset intelligence, and also how many asset licenses have been consumed from the total. SAML SSO provides setting for two-factor authentication. And backup explains how Vantage manages backups and what to do if a user accidentally deletes some of their data. The Teams block is next. Organizations shows current organizations associated with the Vantage instance and allows creation of new organizations as required. Organizations are sub-instances of Vantage that allows Vantage users to create separate environments for corporate groups, with each group sealed off from the other. An example could be an auto manufacturer who wants to separate organizations for each make of vehicle. Also, managed security service providers can create organizations for each of their end customers. Groups allow for user group management, including assigning role-based access control permissions. And users allow the management of individual users, including assigning them to at least one user group. API keys are used in the management of third-party tool access to Vantage using the Nozomi Open API. Lastly, we have the organization block, which provides settings for individual organizations. Updates controls whether connected sensors are updated to the latest version of software by Vantage. Features allow users to preview new and experimental Vantage features if wanted. Sync controls what metadata is synchronized between the connected sensors and Vantage. For example, alerts, assets, audit items, health logs, nodes, links, etc. Tags allow for the creation of tags that can be assigned to assets to allow very granular control of which users have access to which assets based on the assigned tags. Zone configuration. This allows assets to be grouped into zones as per IEC 62443, etc. The Input Assets menu item allows for assets to be manually uploaded to Vantage, useful for when the assets are not online. Manually uploaded assets need to be associated with a sensor. So here I'll select an attached sensor. And now you can see the various formats that can be used for inputting new assets. These include comma-separated values, Honeywell TDC, Allen Bradley L5X, etc. Asset rules. These provide a mechanism to assign created tags to assets based on pre-configured conditions. Alert close options allow different language to be used when closing alerts. And alert playbooks provide the ability to create a playbook with procedures for operators to follow when a particular type of alert occurs. Alert rules. This allows tuning of alerts and assignment of playbooks to the alerts. Integrations list third-party tool integrations with Vantage. These include Splunk at the moment, but will also include IBM QRadar and QROC very shortly. Traffic replays provides the ability to replay a number of PCAPs into Vantage for testing and demonstration purposes. You can see that at the top, there are a number of PCAPs available as standard, substation, healthcare, and printers. CLI allows remote configuration of connector sensors using the command line interface. And then finally, audit logs. These provide access to the audit log. A filter panel at the top of the page allows you to drill down into particular audit events. So that concludes the Nozomi Network's Certified Technical Sales Professional Training course demonstration. Thank you very much for watching.